Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to our Finance Transformation Virtual Summit. My name is Sally Fletcher, Head of SSON Digital, and I'm delighted to be hosting this session today. So before the break, we looked at the topic of skills and capabilities and how you build a skills matrix for your finance shared service centre. We're now going to be looking at a different topic, and that's around payments. Before I introduce our panelists and kickstart the panel, a few notices on the console that you see before you. So this session is eligible for CPE points. I'll go into the eligibility in just a minute, but you can access those CPE points. Also, we have the attendee chat. So at the bottom, there's an attendee chat and there's also a Q&A where you can pose your questions, or if you have any technical problems during the session, put the question in there and me and my colleague Carrie will get right back to you. It's extremely difficult presenting online. We can't hear you, we can't see you, but we love to know you're out there. So please do give our panelists a thumbs up or a smiley face if you agree with their points, and just let them know that you're engaged and enjoying their session. There's also some polls that I'm going to put throughout the session. These polls help us collect data to get to know you and get to understand you, which helps shape our conferences at SSON. And there's our speaker bio and LinkedIn. Here you can connect with our speakers. On LinkedIn, you can read more about them and who they are. And there's finally our resource center. So our resource center has additional resources related to the topic of the presentation. And we've got some great resources from Papaya Global in there, a couple of different case studies on their work in payments transformation, as well as some blogs there for you guys to look at. So CPE eligibility, if you are looking to qualify and to access those CPE points, you must be located in North America and you must attend at least 2 of our sessions live. The number of CPEs will go up after that. So if you attend 2 sessions, you get 1 CPE and so on and so on and so on, you get more. You must vote in all of the polls and you must answer the post-event webinar survey and click yes for the CPE certificate, and that will be shown at the end of today's sessions. I think that's all the admin I have to share. Okay, so I remember most of it. I am going to launch the first poll for you. And what we'd love to look at is, what is your biggest pain point when it comes to cross-border payments? I'm going to put that up there for you to answer. Is it visibility of landing date, additional unexpected costs for FX and banks and processors, siloed internal payment processes, meeting evolving compliance and fraud prevention requirements, and so on. So I'm going to leave that up there for a short while I introduce our panelists for today. So we have Arbita Shetty. She's a general manager and finance global delivery lead at Cola and also the site leader in India. She has fantastic P2P experience as well as record to report and has over 21 years of experience in the shared services landscape, playing various roles across design and solution, transition and transformation of finance and accounting for major organizations in the manufacturing, logistics, real estate and media industry. She's joined by Achille Pagliaro, Senior Director of Payment Success at Papaya Global. Achille brings over a decade of expertise in payments and treasury operations. Leading a skilled team, he develops sophisticated payment solutions that address the complexities of global payroll and payment systems. And his strategic approach focuses on consolidating payment infrastructure into unified systems that prioritize security, operational efficiency, transparency, and cost optimization. And last but very much not least, we have Molly Douch, who's the global process owner for P2P at Zimmer Biomet. Molly has spent 17 years working in supply chain and shared services for numerous Fortune 500 multinationals, as well as consulting with PwC in strategy and operations. Her expertise focuses on GBS reorganization, process redesign, and efficiency driving technology. Most recently, she's worked with aerospace and medical device companies, helping with GBS and process agility and simplicity. So 3 very well qualified panelists to talk to us today about our topic of revolutionizing global payments, AI visibility and real-time action. So I am going to end our poll and take a look at the results. So the highest was additional and unexpected costs from FX and from banks and processors. Okay, Is that something that you have faced, Molly? Is that something that you've come across? Is it a problem for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I was interested in seeing how that poll came out because I had a couple that I wanted to select but couldn't. I would say it resonates in terms of like the varying FX capacities. Um, I think even more so, some of the conversations around tariffs are becoming increasingly challenging. Anyone that's operating in a global environment is probably having similar conversations with their ERP providers and technology providers around how do we make sure our payments are accurate and how do we accommodate for potentially incoming tariffs too. So you might add that to the list for some of the challenges that we're going through. The settlement period is always something that we struggle with when you're operating in a very precise environment of the date in which your recipient needs to receive that payment. When you're talking about international wires, those I have a bit more confidence, but some of the other payment types, you certainly have some level of unknown when you're making some of those international payments.
Definitely. So that makes sense. I'm going to kickstart with our first question. So I'm going to go, what I'm going to start with, I think I'm going to direct this first to you, Arpita. I would love to know, how have you approached improving payments both in your current and previous organizations? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
One of the major unique interventions that we had, and I know many organizations have already started adopting it, is we had signed up for a payment program where the vendors could claim early payments from certain service providers. So it was a great unique opportunity that we had implemented early in those days. Other than that, I think automating all payment runs is very important, because the moment you have manual payments, that becomes another bottleneck in our payment process. Again, a very basic thing that becomes a huge challenge is also having hundreds of payment terms. I think it's very important to standardize and have a very simple list of payment terms so that the complete payment processing is not as complicated as we make it to be.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything that you would add, Achille, to that question about improving payment processes within your organization? I know you've got quite a different perspective.
Yeah, no, actually, I agree with Arpita. So basically, having a simplified, unified platform, which will give you automation and remove, obviously, the manual intervention. I'm talking from, let's say, workforce and payroll perspective. When companies that are normally using bank files, which are very manual. So what we have done, we have implemented, obviously, AI technology and integration with the big corporation, being a regulated business. Obviously, we have alleviated all the let's say challenges that business are experiencing on nowadays in to reduce the manual error and making sure that the payments are accurate and delivered as expected.
Yeah, definitely. I think that simplicity is absolutely key. Molly, would you agree with that? Can you give some insight into how you guys have been improving payments over there at Zimmer Biomet?
Yeah, I think they've hit the major ones. The one thing that I would build on that is saying, some of the more sophisticated banking and payment automations can only happen when data has been cleansed and is in really good shape. So I've tended to work for these large global companies that might use vendors in all three regions or various regions of the world, and I think that comes with a lot of different commercial nuances, and we can have some very messy master data. So I guess I would preface that by saying some of the work to get to payment improvement happens in the master data space. One thing that I'd also add is more restrictive payment calendars. So when you think about does your organization have a policy on payments, going through that and getting support for more restrictive or controlled payment calendars, whether that be globally or regionally to an extent. Another thing that I often do whenever I'm coming into a role that's a global company is think about the organizational makeup too. Do you have a region serving a region, America's team doing payments for an America's region? Can that be globalized? Building up a small COE of of the right control mindset, et cetera. So a couple more things to add in there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I wanted to kind of stay with you, Molly, for the next question that we're asking, and it's about AI, of course. How are forward-thinking organizations currently leveraging AI within their payments? And of course, the all-important question, what ROI are they seeing?
Yes, I will do my best to answer this. I'm not sure I can hit the ROI piece. The way I'm thinking about AI in payments is I think there's some apprehension to considering AI, taking over the payment space. You know, when you talk about, risk in the P2P area, that would be an area that I think, controllership or, leadership might have a sensitivity about. So I think in P2P, you know, the better objective is to prove out AI in some of the lower risk areas, but an area that's a direct, improvement to payments, I think, is how can AI support maybe the payments help desk or customer service elements. I think there's some very low risk wins around having either agentic or non-agentic AI providing responses around payment activity. There tends to be a lot of inquiry around payment activity in the organizations that I've worked in. I think that's a low risk way to have AI infused into the payment space. I think many organizations are assessing, how autonomous you want the AI to be versus, having a human review and in the loop, because there's some very sophisticated use cases that are very compelling to use. Another area that I'm excited that I think has an impact on payments is some of the emerging technology around AI-driven statement reconciliation. I mean, that impacts your entire, accounts payable, but, certainly reduces maybe the payment inquiry, the payment urgency scenarios.
Yeah, fantastic. I think there's so much exciting things that we can do with AI, especially when it's applying to payments. And as you said, when it comes to checking kind of statement reconciliations, but even when it comes to tackling fraud and things like that, that we'll be able to look at going forward. So my next question that I wanted to ask, and Achille, I will come to you with this one. So payment visibility is clearly something more organizations are looking for. How can it improve things like working capital management, vendor relationships, and overall operational agility?
Yeah, sure. So visibility and transparency, obviously nowadays is very, very crucial for businesses. So as Papaya, for example, we are given this to the market in terms of businesses are struggling to see once the payments have been left, let's say, in account, they are not really entirely sure if the funds will be received by the beneficiaries. And we are talking in general in terms of beneficiaries. So the full visibility and transparency on real time, if the payments have been completed or if there is any error. So having an integration with the financial institution in real time via an API, it will give you the full visibility and understanding actually if the payments has landed at the actual expected date. It will not give any doubt to the businesses or specific departments and working out of the blue, and also optimizing the working capital. So sometimes the businesses, when they're using certain let's say service providers, they might fund their bank account or they trust accounts within a month. So this obviously will not optimize the working capital from the businesses. Actually, if you are able to offer a service in terms of funding, let's say wallet or a safeguarded accounts a week, let's say before or a couple of days before the payout date, this will give more chance to the treasury team, finance teams to optimize their working capital, earning interest, because maybe I know this fund has been parked for a specific payments, but at the same time they can earn more money within this period. So when you're choosing a vendor, so obviously it's important to understand what kind of transparency, visibility they can offer, and how they're gonna treat your funds, and if they can guarantee, let's say, the land date of the payments.
Yeah, absolutely. That visibility is absolutely crucial.
It's a key, basically.
Definitely. Alpita, I'd love to direct the same question to you to get your perspective. Just to kind of repeat it, payment visibility is clearly something lots of organizations are looking for. How can it improve working capital, vendor relationships, overall operational agility?
Yeah, so the visibility to payments is very much important, or the accurate forecasting of payments is very much important so that we get a better view of the cash flow. Reviewing the payments is also important because it helps us to negotiate better terms with vendor based on the scale of our business, right? There's another element which is very unique and interesting, and I think that comes within the payment visibility is your duplicate payments. I worked for an organization that had grown with acquisitions, and there were huge duplicate payments that were going out because the systems were not talking to each other. So the systems wouldn't identify if there's a duplicate payment going. And because of that, we had to create that visibility where prior to the payment run, all the payments were being reviewed against the systems outside the system. Unfortunately, we even built a bot for that, but that helped us a lot and helped us to improve the working capital.
Brilliant. I'm going to launch our next poll while I go on to our next question, and it's really around centralizing payments. So it was, I was keen to know how important is centralizing payments across geographies for your organization. Is it something that you're working on? I know a lot of shared services are looking at taking that journey and are, starting to implement, but it would be lovely to get you guys' opinion, our audience. I'll leave that up for a minute while I go to our next question. And Molly, I'd love to bring you back into the conversation here and ask about transformation and really where's the best place to start when you're looking to transform your current payment processes. And added to that, how do you analyze the gaps in your process?
Well, I think one thing that we've done that I think has been very helpful in looking at the gaps in our payment process is using some sort of process mining or process mapping solution to go step by step in your process. What I found is that you have an inkling, maybe a feeling of where you're slowing down in your process or where your process weakness is, but using a solution to make it, time stamped, whether it be by ERP, action, so that you can really understand where you're lagging and where you need to improve. That's been something that's been very helpful for us in transforming. I had another point here that I was trying to find here. Okay. The other thing that I was going to mention is, when working for, larger complex companies, oftentimes you're obligated to act in accordance with your policies that are for your company. I think don't be afraid to challenge the policies and update the policies. They might be older or, not in line with current technology and controls. So I think there's a fair amount of good work in reviewing those policies and updating them for, current state ERPs that have, since been, advanced and more effective. The other place where I think that I've had, consistently a lot of opportunity improving the process is going across whatever your regions are and looking at the approval flow. I find that can often grow out of control. First, and normally it happens because of some business reason at some point in time, but it's always an effective exercise to go through and look at how many approvals and in what system you have. You could very well have a lot of duplicative approvals that you may have outgrown at this point.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Thank you. I think there's a lot of time that we worry about questioning what's come before us and what's in place, but it can be a really valuable exercise to look again with confidence and with data at what exactly the outcomes are. And Arpita, I'd love to ask you the same question. Where would you get started if you were, heading for payment transformation?
Master data. I think every problem starts with a master data. That's been my experience, because anything that leads to an incorrect payment, duplicate payment, or whatever is related to the payment, right? I think master data is where you need to go and start your transformation process from. Most of the time, what we do is we end up introducing technologies to change processes at a payment level, but we never realize that it wouldn't work, right? It's not going to give any results until you have your master data up to date and with complete accurate information. Brilliant.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and also a really good plug for our next session, which is on master data management. So we're going to have the enterprise master data speaker from British American Tobacco. So yeah, guys, please stick around for that. And that wasn't planned. Thank you, Arpita. Achille, I'd love to ask you the same question. I know you bring a slightly different perspective from the technology solution with Papaya Global. Is there kind of a place that you tend to start, especially when working with customers to transform their payment processes, and how do you work with them to analyze the gaps in their process?
Sure. I would probably simplify this in with the three key elements, which is efficiency, transparency, and also cost effectiveness. So in terms of efficiency, looking at your current process, say how you're gonna disperse those payments in globally, which is obviously quite complex, and alleviate any gaps that they have into the manual intervention. As I was mentioning earlier, so many businesses, they use bank files which are not secure. They expose themselves to a fraud or to GDPR data leak. So when you're going through the efficiency, you need to identify a service provider that is going to offer you a unified end-to-end process integrated with the big financial institution where there's no manual intervention. And obviously with the support, which is crucial at Papaya Global, the AI, it will identify any gap in terms of if there is a duplicate payments, if there is an error, and then obviously the platform will give the full visibility. So this will alleviate the pain part of the first gap. The second is obviously the visibility of the flow, making sure that you have the full picture in terms of the end-to-end process where the money is, if it has landed or if not, and gives you the proactiveness in terms of intervene if you need to change bank details, for example, if it's related to a bank account that's been closed or any other additional issues. And in terms also of cost effectiveness, because some business, they think, okay, I can open bank accounts all over the place, which is obviously not efficient because first of all, there are so many legislation around the globe, which they impose you to have local bank account, which it give you to add more resources, and you don't have a centralized function where you can see the flow. So again, yes, you might be able to pay, but at the end of the day, you don't have the same transparency and same efficiency where you can have in one unified platform. And especially for workforce, when we're talking about payroll, it's important for payroll departments, but also for finance departments to have all the data in one place, and will eliminate all those gaps that they are facing on daily basis, monthly basis.
Yes, definitely. So I've just shared the poll results. So we're seeing that it's critical to our global finance strategy, centralizing payments for the most part. Arpita, does that resonate with you and what you've seen at your company and past companies?
Yeah, it is a part of the global finance strategy as well, because generally, when you're setting up a global shared services, right? When initial phases, it's all about setting up operations. But when we then start transforming, it definitely becomes a part of the global finance strategy, because we end up working with the CFO's office, because whatever we do in terms of the transformation, it impacts the global finance strategy.
Brilliant. Let's move to our next question. We wanted to ask about the pain points in cross-border payments. So Achille, let me go to you first, and then I'll go to Arpita. So Achille, what are the most persistent pain points in cross-border payments from a business perspective, and how can companies overcome them?
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a great question. So again, I'm talking about from in this specific case from a payroll perspective. Yeah. So cross-border payments, they might be complex, but obviously they can be. They are difficult, but obviously you can choose obviously the right service to make sure that the payments are disbursed globally. So the pain points are in terms of compliance. And respecting obviously the legal regulation that each country might have. I'm talking more about taxes and third-party payments. So we have countries where you need to have a presence there and making sure that you have a local account there to be compliant and making sure to pay the tax authorities in the right way. So having a global solution where you can offer real-time payments, instant payments, same-day payments in specific regulations. So and moving money across the globe. Obviously, it's the key part in terms of if you are looking to disburse payments globally, but not utilizing several vendors. Another important part in terms of when you disburse payments globally is trying to use a unified channel in terms of banking relationship or service provider, because sometimes you might use a service which using a third parties, which will not give you obviously the visibility. So the money gets flown through an intermediary bank or to a different channels, and it might delay the funds to be received from the beneficiary. Cross borders are complex, as I said, but using the right tool, using the right service might be simplified in one click. At the end, I know sometimes people, they think that payments, they can be done in one click, which is obviously not. But obviously, if you have the right infrastructure in place and you have the right solution in place, this can actually happen, and you can have obviously the best result.
Definitely. Thank you. I also put up the poll that we did earlier just to kind of give a bit of insight into the audience's challenges. But Arpita, I'd love to come to you next with that question. In your experience, what have been the pain points in cross-border payments, and how have you gone about overcoming them?
I think I think Achille has already explained in terms of the complexities. What I would like to add as an experience that I've had is, while we have a lot of regulatory compliance challenges when it comes to cross-border payments, especially for countries like India and China, I think what came across as a bigger challenge is the sense of awareness with the vendors as well as my internal stakeholders, right? Most of them assume that this is a payments process and the payments team needs to deal with it, right? But then it is important that we create awareness with the vendors on what's the process, how complex it is, plus most importantly with the business team, because they need to manage a lot of documentation that the payment team needs to make this cross-border payments, which generally becomes a huge challenge to tackle. I think that needs to be addressed as well for the cross-border payments.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's go to our final question, then I'll open it up to questions from the audience. I've seen a couple come in already, so yeah, really do keep them coming, guys. We want to make it as interactive as possible for you. So Molly, let's go into your broader role, which I know is procure to pay, and we would love to ask how AP can be a driver for payment cadence to help improve working capital benefits.
Yeah, we talked a little bit earlier about payment term synthesizing payment terms. I've found in my current role as well as prior roles where the P2P team can be either a supporting partner or a driving partner for working capital campaigns. And what I mean is, creating a standard term per the region that you work in. So the Americas, you might have a lengthier term, could be 90, could be greater day terms. In Europe, you might have a little bit shorter, APAC similarly. And I've had great success in payment term campaigns. They are a great deal of work and need to be carefully managed. But that can be very successful. Then, obviously your AP organization reaps the benefit of a more simplified payment term, management. I also making sure that you're trimming down on the amount of manual or non-standard payments. So if you're adhering to a calendar, make sure your policies also support the rejection of non-standard payments or off-cycle payments, I'll say. Another area that I'd mention is we've had some success using process mining software to show us where we have payment term, I'll say anomalies, where you have, a payment term on the invoice, you have a different payment term in your master data, a different term on your PO potentially. And we've used process mining software also to look at all of those data points and then alert us so that we can make sure that we're paying to our lengthiest commercially agreed term, which has been, interesting and helpful. I think it also helps illuminate, why are we in a position where we have so much anomaly, and some of it is commercially driven. We've got, vendors that we might use in multiple places with multiple deals. So some of that can't be eliminated, but it also helps us drive towards some efficiency changes too.
Excellent, thank you. We actually had a question come in on process mining where you were talking, just asking about the timelines, like how long did it take to do the process mining and how did you put the findings into action?
Yeah, I say that it's easy to get a process mining tool in place and easy, a couple of months with some support from your IT organization. I think the part that I'd advise to give an appropriate amount of time is the validation. So depending on how your data comes in and how well versed your team is in understanding it, it could take you some time to get some of those use cases into an accurate way. So for example, we talked about like checking for duplicates. We also use it for duplicate payment checking, preventative versus post payment audits. It took us some time to make sure that what we were looking at in the tool was accurate and that we were interpreting our data correctly. So I would advise that that takes a little bit of time.
Makes sense. Great. So I'll open it up to questions from the audience. And we've had a question come through from Mike, which I'll direct to you, Achille. And it's what tools and platforms are being used to provide payment visibility to vendors? So maybe you can tell us a bit about your one.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Papaya Global, what we have built obviously is the platform from payroll and payments perspective, and we also have a payments application. So to improve obviously the visibility, we have invested massively in technology. So basically, our platform is gonna once you log in our platform, you can see the full flow in real time. So we have integration with financial institution where it gives you the visibility in terms of the end-to-end process. If there is any duplicate, so the AI is supporting if they spot any anomaly into the flow. So we offer the full visibility from virtual wallet perspective. We are a regulated business, so we offer safeguarded accounts, and the virtual wallet give the full visibility in terms of the funding balance. We also give a possibility to download the statements for the cash in, cash out, and balance left. And also we give the payments report in real time. Once you log in, you can see where the payments are, if they've been completed, if they've been failed, why they've been failed, and also if they've been rejected or any kind of status that the payments might have. You can also download from the platform the proof of payments that can be shared with the beneficiary if they are incurring in some issues, or if they need the statement, the proof of payments for whatever reason. We have also and basically all of these will give the full visibility, and the customers are super happy because they were working in the past with the bank files, and once they were uploaded into their banking platform, they lost the traceability of it. And if something was going to happen, basically their beneficiary were contacted, let's say in this case, the employer. And obviously the employer is legally obliged to make sure that the funds is into the beneficiary account at the contractual payday. So with this platform that we have built here at Papaya, this has alleviated lots of painful parts. So the payroll departments, they don't need to go to their finance team, they need to trace, they can actually go into the platform and see it's a sort of self-service. And plus, obviously, will give you the 90% of the money given transmitted around the globe instantly in real time, same day. So that's what we have built Papaya, and this obviously has alleviated lots of challenges for existing customers and new customers also.
Brilliant, thank you. A question I'll direct to you, Molly, is from Sergio, and it's asking, how far are we from getting to 100% automation on procure-to-pay processes, or at least on AP process? What's your opinion?
I hate starting an answer with this, but it depends. It probably depends on the organization that you work in. I've worked in some companies that have really, progressed maturity in terms of governance and controls. And I would say companies that are more inclined to place rigid requirements in your buying and invoicing space, you're probably going to get to automation quicker than a company that's still progressing in that avenue. So, of course, you have to have the technology that allows for, true automation, electronic processing, electronic invoicing. But then you also have to have the requirement to onboard suppliers in the most effective way. So if you buy these sophisticated tools that are going to allow you to, process electronically, then you also have to have the, I would say, commitment to onboard suppliers that way, rather than to continue to let them maybe manually invoice with PDF invoice submission, et cetera. So I think it depends. I think the technology is there. And, I certainly see, populations that are truly, touchless, but I think it depends a lot on your commitment to, the technologies that you're using.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had another question come through. I'll direct it to you, Apite, about your advice on preventing fraud in global payments. Is there any kind of strategies you've used around that, or, anything you can add here?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear.
Oh, strategies around defending against fraud in cross-border payments.
Okay, I think, yeah, that's a pretty complicated one, but what you need to do is, in terms of the fraud, I think the countries that actually have the cross-border payments has a lot of regulatory requirements that is there. I think while the bank has their controls that we have, which helps to avoid this frauds, at our end, I think it's very important that your master data is updated and you do not compromise on the compliance and regulatory requirements. There are times where we have missing documentation, because of which we might end up being prone to frauds. That's where we don't compromise. We make sure our documentations are extremely accurate, and the payments team does that pre-check and pre-work to avoid frauds going forward.
Great.
And yes, of
You want
course,
to
when you're a vendor, there's a lot of tools available in the market today that flags off such vendors where they see there has been compliance issues. So even like I said, it all starts with the master data, right? So even when you're setting up a vendor for a foreign vendor, there are many checks and balances, and there are external tools that can be used to verify if it's a genuine vendor or not.
Definitely. Achille, is there anything you want to add on that, when it comes to tackling fraud in a global payment network?
Yeah, I mean, like from Papaya perspective, what we have done, obviously, we have a data validation. So we conduct, obviously, we collect information well in advance for customers that are going live with their beneficiary. Obviously, the exchange of the information is going through the secure portal within the platform. And before any payments has been dispersed, obviously, there is data validation in terms of conducting a penny test, make sure that we have all the right information to avoid any surprise, on top of obviously our compliance that is behind the scene, and making sure that everything that we are going to disperse is legitimate and genuine. And plus we have obviously the banks that we are working with, they do their due diligence as well. So as a regulated business, as Paya is a regulated business, we always go through the auditing and making sure that our infrastructure and technology is secured and is audited constantly. And this, obviously, with the AI support, will help us out to prevent fraud in terms of payments dispersal.
Yeah, definitely. Time for maybe 2 more questions. So the next question I will take is around the regulatory challenges. So Moni, maybe I can direct this one to you. What regulatory challenges have you found that arise when you're doing kind of a unified global payments approach?
Yeah, I would say the biggest regulatory challenge that comes to mind is probably in Europe and in Asia. So, maybe in Asia, some of the things that, I'm conflicted on or still trying to find solutions for are some of the requirements around paper invoice retention. And, as we globalize and centralize into maybe GBS hubs or something like that, we have a limited amount of staffing to handle some of those, manual or physically, required documents. So that's one challenge that we're working through. Another challenge I would say on the regulatory front in Europe is some of the dynamic e-invoicing guidance. So what countries are going to require what invoicing requirements by what time, and those dates seem to shift quite a bit. So I would say that those are probably the 2 major regulatory items that I'm focused on right now.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at the poll results now. So I've entered our poll, and my question was, what aspect of multi-currency payments management requires the most resources at your organization? And payment processing and reconciliation has been the top guest, it's not a guess, the top rated, followed by regulatory compliance and currency exchange. Achille, how would you tackle those challenges?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, to be honest, I was expecting payments processing like the most challenged one, because as I said, making manual payments and using manual intervention and solution obviously is a challenge, and also is a challenge when you're paying globally in terms of reconciliation, because you need to go to each different teams and trying to combine the data. And I'm sure that the majority of the business, they are still operating in this way. They need to combine manual Excel files or any kind of tools that they normally use. So again, as Papaya, we have built something to offer to the market in terms of payments and reconciliation, which will alleviate this painful part, which you will have all your legal entities globally in one place. So basically, you don't have to operate manually in terms of payments. You don't have to reconcile manually, because everything is available into the platform to be downloaded and customized at the customer level and at legal entity level. But to be honest, all the points that in terms of the question of the answers that they've been given, they are quite valid point. Even in terms of regulatory compliance is important for what we are discussing earlier, which each country has got a different regulation and legislation, and also the fraud and prevention and security. It's another factor, because obviously, if you are not capable to prevent those, you will expose your business at a risk, and it might reduce also the attraction in terms of new hires. And also the currency exchange and banking relationship is another one, because you need to make sure you choose the right the right provider to pay globally, and at the same time that they can give you the full visibility and let's say not overcharging you in terms of FX. FX is a very sensitive topic that no one would like to discuss, but so many would like to understand a little bit more. So yeah, they're all valid points, to be honest.
Excellent. Well, sadly, that's all we've got time for. We've reached the top of our time. So I want to say thank you so much to all of our panelists for joining today and giving their expert advice on the topic of payments. I hope that you guys enjoyed it in the audience. We will be taking a short break right now, just 15 minutes, when we'll be back for our next session on the topic of master data management. So Antonina Iberon, she's from British American Tobacco, and she's a global lead for enterprise data management. She's going to be talking to us all about how BAT have built their master data management plan, how they're using it, and how they're integrating things like automation within there, how they're cleansing it, and how it's becoming more reliable. So you can join us back here in 15 minutes for that session. But thanks once again to our wonderful panelists for today's presentation.